She texted, "I don't love you anymore. Consider this goodbye." She sent it 2 minutes before my graduation ceremony started. I replied, "Understood." Then I cut all ties. 4 days later, she was waiting outside my building, and the first sentence she said changed her whole face. "My name is Chase Nolan," and that moment, the one where the phone vibrated in my palm, felt like the chaotic end to a life I had spent 3 decades building into an impenetrable fortress. If you had walked into my apartment a few weeks ago, you would have seen a man who had eliminated risk from his vocabulary. My apartment was less a home and more a geometric proof of my control. The calendar on the kitchen wall was color-coded: navy for classes, sapphire for coding projects, cobalt for the gym. I owned 24 highlighters, all perfectly aligned by shade in my desk drawer. My life was defined by the belief that if you anticipated every threat, followed every rule, and worked harder than everyone else, life would sign a contract promising not to blindside you. I used to think that kind of structure meant I was safe. It was 7 o'clock on a Saturday morning. The sun, usually a cheerful, intrusive yellow, was muffled by a dull, gray haze outside our 12-story window. Graduation wasn't until 2 in the afternoon, but I had been awake since 5:30, fueled by jittery adrenaline and a sense of imminent relief. Today was supposed to be the moment of exhale. 18 months of drowning. 12-hour days split between classes, complex projects, and late nights debugging data pipelines that seemed personally offended by my existence. I had sacrificed almost everything for this degree, a specialized certification in data analytics, all to secure the next 20 years of breathing room. That sacrifice had cost me Alexandria. I met Alex 5 years ago, when I went back for my MBA. She was the one who could walk into any room and have 5 new friends before finding a chair. I spoke spreadsheet, she spoke people. Somehow it worked, or at least, I thought it did. We built what I believed was a solid, grown-up life. Shared streaming passwords, joint grocery trips, a mutual set of friends whose algorithm genuinely believed we were one person. The last year, however, changed the equation. The intensity of the new program consumed me entirely. I kept telling myself, and her, it was temporary. Alex said she supported it. She told our friends how proud she was. But in our 74 square meter apartment, in the quiet, her support came out sideways, dulled at the edges. "You're always busy. You never have time for us anymore. Everything revolves around your laptop." I tried to balance. Balance is a pretty word for a thing that doesn't really exist. Something always falls. Most days, it was the social part of me. The part of me that was supposed to be a good partner. I had convinced myself that enduring this 18 months of exhaustion was caring enough about our future to sacrifice the present. Friday night, the air in our apartment felt heavy, thick with the unsaid. I was at the kitchen table, going over my speech notes. Because, of course, I had been selected to speak on behalf of my cohort, while Alex lay on the couch, scrolling on her phone. "Have you picked out what you're wearing tomorrow?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light, half checking, half teasing. I felt like my partner of 5 years shouldn't show up to my commencement in an athletic hoodie. "I haven't decided yet," she said without looking up. "It's tomorrow," I reminded her. "Just wondering." "I know when it is." Her words were flat, scraped clean of warmth. Around 10, she announced she was tired and went to bed without so much as a kiss on the forehead. I stayed at the table, reading my speak loud to an audience of dirty coffee mugs. I rationalized it. We were both stressed. Relationships weren't supposed to be graded on one weird night before graduation. Saturday morning. I put on the navy suit I'd bought specifically for this day. Alexandria emerged around 9:30 in the same shirt she'd tossed on the floor the night before. "You're up early," she observed. "Big day. Remember?" I offered a tight smile. "Right. Your thing. My graduation," I said, a little sharper than I meant to. "Yeah. That's what I meant." Her tone scraped against my nerves, but I swallowed the irritation. Not today. Today was supposed to be about achievement and relief. I made breakfast. She ate in silence, face lit by a screen that apparently had more to say to her than I did. I needed to leave around 11:30. At 11:15, she was still in pajamas. No effort that suggested she was planning to celebrate the culmination of my brutal, obsessive months of labor. "Hey," I said, my voice finally losing its practiced steadiness. "We need to leave in 15 minutes. You're not dressed." I'm aware. For the first time that morning, she really looked at me. Not at the suit, not at the speech notes, but at the person who was about to achieve a long-sought goal. "Are you coming?" I hesitated, letting the question hang in the thick air. "I don't know," she said. "Do you really need me there?" It hit me in the chest, the ultimate rejection of the contract. "It's my graduation," I said. "Of course I need you there. You have your parents, your brother. You'll be fine. That's not the point. You're my partner." "This is important to me," she scoffed. "Everything is important to you lately. Your classes, your projects, your career. What about what's important to me?" There it was. The sentence she had been building toward for months. "This isn't the time for this conversation," I said, checking the clock. "I need to leave in 10 minutes. Then leave." I grabbed my keys, my phone, the folder with my speech notes. I took one last look at her, standing there in her worn t-shirt, arms crossed. "Please, just please be there. We'll see." The drive to campus felt like a tunnel, all focus and speed. I kept glancing at my phone, willing it to light up with a message saying she was sorry, that she was on her way. Nothing. I arrived at the auditorium, checked in, collected my gown and cap, and found my spot in the line-up. Everyone around me buzzed with excitement. Photos, hugs, relief. I smiled, nodded, laughed in the right places. Inside, something was already unraveling quietly, thread by thread. The air in the holding room was thick with a nervous, triumphant energy that I couldn't access. I stood in my academic regalia, the weight of the heavy gown oddly comforting, a uniform of my success. Around me, my cohort, people I had shared countless late nights and impossible deadlines with, were taking excited selfies, adjusting their caps, and whispering final career hopes. I mimicked their behavior, smiling at the right times, nodding when someone spoke about relief. But inside, I was listening to the silent frequency of my phone. I kept checking the time, running the clock in my head. 1 o'clock. 1:30. 1:40. 5. Alex had 1 hour, then 45 minutes, then 15 minutes to make it here, to meet my parents who were already seated, to honor the 5 years we had invested. The logic of my life was screaming she will show up. She has to. This is a rule. At 1:58 p.m. 2 minutes before the ceremony was scheduled to start, my phone buzzed in my hand. It was a notification from Alex. Time slowed down completely. My brain knew, before my eyes registered the text, that this was the moment everything changed. The moment the fortress of my structured life would be breached. It wasn't a panicked apology, or a message saying she was stuck in traffic. It was the calculated detonation. I opened the text. "I don't love you anymore. Consider this goodbye." I read it once, then again, then a third time. The processional mill music started somewhere distant, the first notes of the achievement I had built my entire year around. A coordinator walked down the line, checking our positions, reminding us when to move. My phone buzzed again, a frantic follow-up. I should have told you sooner. I've been feeling this way for months. I can't keep pretending. A classmate behind me, noticing the sudden stiffness in my posture, asked, "Are you okay, Chase?" I nodded, my lips pressed together so tightly they hurt. I had approximately 90 seconds before I had to follow the person in front of me out onto the floor. 90 seconds to make a decision. I could call her. I could beg for an explanation. I could ask if this was a joke, a test, some cruel attempt at attention. I could let her detonate the day entirely and fall apart in the gown line up. Or I could do something I had never done in 5 years with her. I could refuse to give her the power to destroy me. My thumbs moved before my brain finished voting. The choice was not about love, but about survival and self-respect. I typed one word. Understood. No questions. No bargaining. No. Can we talk about this? Or, please don't do this today. I silenced my phone, slid it into the pocket sewn into the lining of the gown. When the line lurched forward, I walked. The ceremony is a blur in my memory now. Like someone fast, forwarded through the tape, and only kept the required highlights. I heard my name called, walked across the stage, shook hands, accepted my diploma, and smiled for the camera. The internal part of me, the vulnerable Chase, had retreated entirely. I was operating on pure, cold training. I gave my speech on behalf of our cohort, every line I had rehearsed for weeks spilling out of me on autopilot. I spoke about the power of data, about structured logic, and the bright, certain future we had all earned. People stood. They clapped. A couple of my classmates cried. Inside, I felt nothing. Just a strange, hollow calm, like I had been scraped out and left with only an outline of myself. The pain was deferred. The fortress was breached. But the core was empty, offering the attack nothing to damage. After the ceremony, my parents found me first. My mother's face was blotchy from crying. My father hugged me so hard my cap nearly fell off. My brother clapped me on the back and made a joke about me being addicted to tuition payments. "You were incredible," my mother said, holding me at arm's length. "Where's Alex? I want a picture of all of you together." I forced the words out, the first lie I had to tell. She couldn't make it. "Oh, no. Is everything okay?" she asked, the first thread of worry pulling at her face. "Yeah. Everything's fine," I said, trying to infuse warmth into a face that felt like stone. Something just came up. The sky had bruised purple, and the parking lot lights had already flickered on, throwing long, geometric shadows across the pavement. I parked my car in the usual spot, took a deep breath, and walked toward the building entrance. Alexandria's car was gone. The sight of the empty space was the first confirmation that the text message was not a cruel joke or a plea for attention. It was a fact. It was done. Inside the apartment, most of her large possessions were still there, but not all of the essentials. Her laptop was missing from the kitchen counter. Her favorite, worn leather jacket, the one she insisted she couldn't live without, was gone from the hook by the door. Her phone charger, the 3 pairs of shoes she wore constantly, a small jewelry box, the things you grab when you have already decided you are not coming back. She hadn't just broken up with me via text. She had planned her exit while I was exhausting myself for a future she knew she would abandon. I stood in the doorway for a long minute, my keys still in my hand, trying to feel something big enough to match the magnitude of the moment. Nothing came. No tears, no screaming rage. No instant need to replay the last 5 years looking for clues. There was only a cold, methodical determination. The kind of focus I usually reserved for debugging several thousand lines of code. My first response was an act of digital amputation. I put my graduation bag down, took off my heels, and placed my suit jacket neatly over the back of a chair. Then I pulled out my phone and worked through the applications. Block. 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 Her number, her Instagram, her profile on the site we used to share memes, the old Twitter account where she first flirted with me. Every platform where her face had ever popped up with a notification that used to make my chest flutter was severed. Gone. Then came the harder part, the memories. Nothing. It was like someone had reached into my chest, scooped everything out, and left hollow air behind. No grief, no relief, just absence. The logical, organized core of me took over. I would not allow chaos to win. The plan was simple: establish control, establish structure, and survive. The methodical precision of my life, the very thing Alex had resented, was now my life raft. So, I did what I always do when I don't know what else to do. I got up. The house was too quiet, the absence of Alexandria a physical pressure on the air. I made coffee. I worked out, pushing through a high-intensity routine that left my muscles aching and my mind temporarily blank. I meal prepped for the week, lining up the glass containers of chicken and steamed vegetables like little soldiers in the fridge. I reorganized the spice rack in alphabetical order, correcting the minor transgression of the thyme being out of place. Routine, structure, control. All the things that had never left me. Unlike the woman who had. It was around 2 o'clock in the afternoon that the silence was broken. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail. But some stubborn, curious part of me, the part that still wanted to understand the mechanism of my betrayal, picked it up. Hello, Chase. It was her. Her voice hit a nerve I didn't know was still exposed, a dull ache in the center of my chest. How did you get this number? I asked, already knowing the answer. I borrowed my friend's phone, she said quickly. You blocked me. Yes, I said. I did. We need to talk. Her voice was already edged with a demanding tone, expecting the negotiation phase to begin. No, I said, surprising even myself with how calm, how utterly devoid of emotion I sounded. We don't. You said what you needed to say yesterday. I accepted it. We are done. You can't just block me and act like I don't exist. She snapped. I can. Actually, I replied. You ended things. I am respecting your decision. I didn't mean we couldn't talk anymore. She insisted. What did you think consider this goodbye meant? Alex. Silence crackled between us for a second. The space was filled with the sound of my air conditioner, the rhythmic drone of a machine that worked reliably. I meant we were breaking up. She said, defensive. Not that you'd shut me out completely. That is what a breakup is, I said. We are done. No more contact. But my stuff is still at the apartment. It's packed, I said. Let me know when you want to pick it up, and I'll make sure I'm not here. This is ridiculous, she snapped. You're being childish. I'm being clear, I said. You don't love me anymore. You said goodbye, so goodbye. I hung up. My hand shook a little as I tapped the screen to block that number too. But it wasn't sadness. It was adrenaline. The kind you get when you walk across a tightrope and realize you didn't fall. I had held the boundary. Over the next 24 hours, she tried calling from 2 more numbers. One was her brother's. One was a burner app number that showed up as unknown area code. I didn't answer either one. Block. Every time, it got easier. The emotional weight of the action lessened with repetition. Monday morning, I went to work. It was my first official day in the new position I had earned because of that degree. The one she couldn't be bothered to watch me receive. The timing felt cosmically corrective. My boss met me at my desk with a grin and a stack of onboarding materials. "Congratulations, Chase," she said. "Both on the graduation and the promotion." The team had decorated my monitor with a paper graduation cap. There was cake in the break room. People clapped when I walked in. They asked about my speech. They told me how proud they were. It was the celebration I should have had with the person who had shared my bed for 5 years. Instead, I got something better. A room full of people who showed up and valued my effort without strings attached. When I got home that night, there were no voicemails, but there was a notification from an ancient messaging platform, one we'd used the first semester of grad school. From Alex. "Please, we need to talk. I made a mistake. Can we just talk in person?" I stared at the screen, feeling that old, familiar tug. The part of me that wanted to understand, to fix, to smooth over. Then I remembered the timestamp on her breakup text, 1:50, 8 p.m. I remembered the way she had stood in the kitchen that morning, arms crossed, asking if I really needed her there. The logical core reasserted itself. I typed slowly. "No. Pick up your stuff this week or I'm donating it." Her reply came fast. "You're being cruel." "I'm being done," I wrote back. There's a difference. Then I blocked her there, too. I had successfully treated the relationship like a system error, identified the bug, contained the thwart and isolated the corrupted file. The fortress was still breached, but it was being rapidly rebuilt with steel instead of soft promises. On Wednesday, Alexandria escalated. I was at my desk at the office, deeply immersed in a complex predictive model, when my personal phone buzzed with a text message from a familiar number. It was Mrs. Keller, the retired teacher who lived in the unit downstairs. She knew everyone's business and pretended she didn't. "There's a man waiting outside your building," she wrote. "Says he's your boyfriend. Looks upset. Should I call someone?" I stared at the message, my jaw tight. The impersonal efficiency of the block button had failed against sheer physical presence. This was not about talking, it was about performance and pressure. "He's my ex," I replied, typing quickly. "Please don't worry. He'll leave eventually." He did. According to Mrs. Keller's follow-up texts, he stayed for 3 hours. He sat hunched on the steps, staring at the main door like he could will me to appear. He checked his phone repeatedly. He stood up every time someone walked by, hope breaking across his face, then collapsing when he realized it wasn't me. A part of me felt a tiny, inconvenient pang for that version of her, the one who looked lost and small, and nothing like the person who had detonated my graduation with a text. Most of me, however, felt nothing but irritation at the disruption. By Thursday, the siege had become predictable. I started adjusting my routine. I began working late, deliberately scheduling time in the office, until 7:30 p.m. I went to the gym across town. I lingered in a coffee shop with my laptop, long after I'd finished my drink. I was waiting her out, turning my life into a series of evasive maneuvers, so that when I finally drove home, the steps would be empty. That afternoon, she left something at my door. When I opened the front door to grab a package delivered earlier, I found a gift bag sitting on the mat. It was heavy, stuffed full. Inside, I could see the printed edges of old photos, handwritten notes, ticket stubs from concerts, and a scrapbook with a cover labeled Chase plus Alex. Our story. 6 months ago, the sight of that scrapbook would have broken me. The old Chase would have sat cross-legged on the floor, flipping through each glossy page, tears blurring the images of our smiling faces. He would have clung to that nostalgia like a life raft, convinced that love meant fighting through the hurt to rescue whatever remained. But the man standing there now felt a profound sense of clarity. No anger, no longing, no regret. Just clear vision. I put the entire bag, scrapbook, photos, and all the tangible memories straight into the building's trash chute. The hollow thump it made, when it dropped into the metal bin below, was the sound of a chapter closing, clean and final. Later that day, I drafted a formal email to my landlord, explaining the situation, the breakup, the harassment, and my desire to terminate the lease early. He called within the hour. I expected bureaucracy or indifference, but instead, he sounded relieved. "Oh, thank God, Alex," he said. "Yeah. I've seen her around the building, pacing. I figured something was going on. Listen, if you want to move out sooner, I can waive the fees." "Seriously?" I asked. "Absolutely. And if she shows up again and makes you uncomfortable, I'll contact the police on your behalf." I hadn't expected empathy or the validation that came from someone acknowledging that what I was dealing with wasn't normal. I took the offer immediately. My move-out date went from 2 weeks to 5 days. I scheduled movers for Friday and booked a short-term rental across town. It was smaller than my current apartment, but it was safer. Anonymous. Mine. The speed of the decision was exhilarating. It confirmed the truth. She was disrupting my carefully constructed world, and the only way to establish irrevocable safety was to remove myself from the target zone entirely. I realized, hadn't just given me a breakup, she had given me a window to escape the life I had built around her. I was not avoiding her. I was executing a strategic retreat and securing a new, uncompromised stronghold. The final confrontation was coming, but I would meet it on my terms, with the knowledge that my entire escape route was already meticulously planned and financed. The end was no longer about pain, it was about procedure. Friday was the first time I actually ran into her. The day was chaotic. My last meeting at work ran late, and by the time I left the office, the sun was low and my brain was fried from too many spreadsheets and not enough oxygen. I drove home, parked in my usual spot, slung my gym bag over my shoulder, and headed toward the building entrance. The movers were coming early the next morning, and I felt the heavy presence of finality settling over me. She was there, sitting on the steps, hunched over, elbows on her knees. She stood up the second she saw me, like she had been coiled this whole time, waiting to spring. "Finally," she said, her voice tight. "I've been trying to talk to you for days." I didn't speed up. I didn't slow down. I just walked toward the door, carrying the momentum of my planned escape. "I have nothing to say to you. Please, just give me 5 minutes." She followed me up the 2 steps to the landing. "You had 5 years," I said, my voice low and steady. "You threw it away via text during my graduation. I don't owe you 5 more minutes." I was confused. She said, the words tumbling over each other. I was overwhelmed. "You were so busy and I felt neglected, and I didn't handle it well." "Okay," I replied, pulling my keys out to unlock the main building door. The word was flat, non-committal. "That's your explanation?" I asked, looking at her then. "You felt neglected, so you decided to nuke my life 2 minutes before I walked on stage." "I wasn't thinking," she protested. "I was hurt. I thought you'd fight for us." That sentence lodged in my chest like a splinter, an unexpected piece of insight. It was the answer to the whole puzzle. "There it is," I said softly, the realization chilling me. You didn't want to break up. You wanted a performance. You wanted me to chase you. I wanted you to show you cared. She shot back, the raw accusation finally out in the open. I took a breath, steady and slow. I spent 18 months showing I cared. I said. I cared enough about our future to exhaust myself for it. You felt neglected, and instead of talking to me like an adult, you ended things in the cruelest way you could think of. And now that I've taken you at your word and moved on, suddenly you want to rewind. Chase, please, she said, stepping closer, her voice cracked. I made a mistake. I don't want to lose you. I love you. I looked into her eyes. The worst part was that I believed her. I believed that some part of her, standing there on the steps, really did love me, or at least the comfort of my presence. I believed she regretted the text. I believed she was scared. But I also believed something else. A terrifying certainty that if I let her back in, this would happen again the next time life got hard. You know what's funny? I said, the quietness of my voice amplifying the gravity of the moment. I believe you didn't mean it when you typed it. Not fully. But you meant it enough to send it. You meant it enough to time it for maximum damage. That tells me everything I need to know. Tears spilled over her lashes. Real ones, not the dramatic kind. I had been with her long enough to know the difference. Please, she whispered. I love you. I do. And that was when I said the one sentence that changed her whole face. It was the truth of my new life, the ultimate withdrawal of my vulnerability. I signed a lease for a new apartment, I said. I move out tomorrow. Your stuff will be here until then. After that, I don't care what happens to it. The blood drained from her face. You're moving, she repeated, the word sounding like an insult, an impossible concept she hadn't factored into her script. Yes. We're none of your business. We live together, she said, her voice pitching higher now, the panic rising. You can't just move out. The lease is in my name, I reminded her. I gave notice yesterday. You're not on it, so you don't get a say. Where am I supposed to live? She demanded. Again, I said, pulling open the building door. Not my problem. You ended this. Figure it out. This is insane, she yelled, stepping forward. You're throwing away 5 years? No, I replied calmly, stepping inside the doorway. You did that on May 18th at 1:50, 8 p.m. I'm just accepting reality. Her mouth opened and closed, searching for something to say that would rewind time. I pulled the heavy door shut before she could catch it. Her palm hit the glass with a dull thud. Through the thin metal and glass, I could hear her saying my name, pounding, pleading. I turned and climbed the stairs to the apartment. I would be leaving forever in 12 hours. The last thing I heard was her voice, desperate and broken, echoing in the stairwell. I unlocked my door and closed it behind me. Then, I did something I hadn't done in days. I exhaled. The sound was ragged and deep. I had stood my ground, and the foundation hadn't crumbled. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I was sad. Sadness requires a softness I no longer possessed. My mind kept worrying, like an engine that couldn't shut off, meticulously checking the structural integrity of the boundaries I had just established. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Alexandria on those steps, panic-stricken, like she had only just realized that consequences were real, and that I was no longer responsible for mitigating them. By morning, something inside me felt settled. Not healed, not whole, just decided. That feeling carried me through the last few days in the apartment. Saturday, I woke up early, grabbed a stack of boxes, and began packing with the kind of methodical precision I normally reserved for reorganizing financial spreadsheets. Tax documents, kitchen staples, winter clothes. I sorted everything into neat categories: keep, donate, trash, storage. Each box felt like a small act of reclaiming the apartment and myself from the shadow of what had been us. She emailed that morning. I hadn't thought to block her there yet. The subject line was nothing dramatic, just my name. Inside was a wall of text: apologies, explanations, a disjointed essay about being stressed, insecure, and overwhelmed. She wrote about wanting me to fight for her. How she thought me being busy meant I didn't care. How she sent the breakup text in a moment of frustration. I read exactly 2 sentences. Then I closed the email. I wrote back, concise and final. I listened to you when you told me you don't love me. I listened when you said goodbye. I am honoring your choice. Stop contacting me. Then I blocked her and set up a filter, so anything sent from her address would auto-delete. Gone like it never existed. That afternoon, the final attempt at sentimentality arrived. When I opened the front door to grab one last box of packing tape, I found a new gift bag sitting on the mat. This one was drenched from a sudden, hard rain, its contents clumped together, the paper cover torn. Another bag full of sentimental relics, destroyed by water and weather. I threw it out without opening it. By Tuesday, she escalated again. This time, she brought reinforcements. I heard them before I saw them: muffled voices in the hall, one firm and maternal, the other frayed and familiar. I froze on the couch, heart thrumming but body still. Chase. Her mother called. "Honey, can we talk to you?" "Sweetheart," she continued gently. "This is Alexandria's mom. We just want to make sure you're okay. Can you open the door?" Alexandria knocked next, softer now, but desperate. "Chase, please. I'm begging you. Just 5 minutes." I stayed silent, my eyes fixed on the wall. I wasn't giving them the satisfaction of hearing me move. "Maybe he's not home," her mother murmured. "He's here." Alexandria whispered back, her voice raw. "His shoes are by the door." "I know he's here." I clenched my jaw. Her mother tried again, her voice strained with that tired compassion I used to mistake for kindness. "Please, honey. You two can talk this out. 5 years is a long time. She's hurting." She's hurting. That word struck something cold inside me. She was hurting now. But what about me? Where was this empathy when she stood in our kitchen, arms crossed, dismissing my achievements? Where was this concern when she hit send at 1:58 p.m., shattering 5 years with a sentence? He expected me to fall apart. He expected me to fight for him. He expected me to orbit his gravity the way I had for years. Instead, I considered it. I agreed, and it was the best decision I ever made. The first night in my new apartment felt strange in a way I didn't expect. Not lonely, not sad, just quiet. A kind of quiet I had forgotten was possible. No shoes by the door that weren't mine. No half-drunk protein shake left on the counter. No background hum of someone else's routine tugging against mine. The silence felt like a warm bath. Unsettling at first, then soothing, then necessary. I unpacked slowly, one box at a time. My things, my choices, my placement. No compromises. I didn't check my old phone once. No part of me wondered whether Alexandria had tried to call or text or show up at the old apartment. It wasn't my concern anymore. I had given her the only information she was entitled to, a storage unit number and a deadline. Everything else, my address, my routines, my peace, was no longer accessible to her. I slept that night the way I used to sleep before I learned what it felt like to be responsible for someone else's emotional weather. Deep, uninterrupted. Mine. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight instead of dread. My new apartment had big windows. Slept, tall rectangular wells of brightness that poured light onto the hardwood floors. I made coffee and stood barefoot by the glass, watching the street below. No one knew I lived here, except my family and two close friends. It felt like witness protection for my emotional life. I got ready for work without tiptoeing around another person's schedule. I put on a playlist she always hated, soft indie songs that made me feel like things were okay, even when they weren't. I took the long way to the office, just because the weather was nice. At my desk, my boss stopped by. "Chase, I forgot to tell you yesterday. Leadership loved your work on the predictive models. They are considering you for a project lead position next quarter." I blinked at her. "A promotion already?" She smiled. "Don't look so shocked. You earned it. I'm proud of you, but I miss us. I'm proud of you, but this is getting ridiculous. I'm proud of you, but you're never home. Here at work, where no one loved me, or lived with me, or knew my childhood stories. I was valued without clauses." It was both beautiful and devastating. Over the next 2 weeks, my life shifted into a new shape. Not a perfect shape, not a triumphant victory. Just something stable, mine quiet enough that I could hear my own thoughts again. By the 3rd week, Alexandria escalated again. This time, she tried to go through mutual friends. 3 different people texted me variations of the same message. Alex is really struggling. She feels awful about what happened. She wants closure. She didn't mean to hurt you. Can you just give her 5 minutes? I answered each message with the same copy, paste clarity. She ended a 5-year relationship via text 2 minutes before my graduation ceremony. I have nothing more to say to her. Please don't pass along messages. 2 people understood. The 3rd, one of her closest friends, sent back a paragraph that started with, "You're being heartless," and ended with, "Everyone makes mistakes." I replied with exactly 1 sentence. She didn't just make a mistake. She made a decision. I didn't hear from that friend again. The quiet of my new life was interrupted only once more by her. It was a Wednesday, 3 weeks after I moved out, when security at my office called. "There's a woman downstairs saying she needs to see you," the guard said. "Claims she's your girlfriend." I closed my eyes. "She's not," I said. "Please ask her to leave. She's refusing. Says it's urgent. Then call the police." There was a pause. "Oh, yes, sir." She left before the police arrived, but not before causing enough of a scene that 2 coworkers approached me later, asking if everything was okay. I didn't hide it. "My ex is having trouble respecting boundaries," I said. "We're handling it." My boss invited me into her office later that afternoon. "Do you feel safe?" she asked gently. "Yes," I said, and I meant it. Because safety, I had learned, wasn't about where I lived or who I blocked. It was about the decision I made the moment I typed "understood." It was about choosing myself. 6 weeks after graduation, I stood in the middle of my small, sunlit apartment and realized I was happy. Not ecstatic, not in love, not suddenly healed. Just peacefully, quietly still. I had 2 degrees. A career that was finally taking shape. A promotion on the horizon. Friends who showed up. A space that was entirely my own. And a heart that, though bruised, was undeniably mine again. Someone asked me recently if I missed her. I answered honestly. "No," I said. "I miss who I thought she was. But the person who sent that text, I don't miss her at all." And I meant every word.